We were standing near the giraffe enclosure when the man pointed at me. He was wearing a zoo staff uniform, khaki with a faded green patch over his chest that said, Clark. He looked stunned, like he'd seen a ghost. I smiled politely, thinking he must have confused me for someone else. It happens. My daughter, Maylee, was gripping my hand, her other one clutching a melting swirl of cotton candy. She was giggling at the giraffe's long tongues and trying to get one to wave at her. That's when Clark said it. She's back. He didn't say it to me. He said it like he was talking to himself, but his eyes never left my face. I turned, a little confused, still trying to be polite, still holding that uncomfortable smile people give when they're not sure what's happening. I'm sorry, have we met? I asked. He stepped closer. His face was pale and there was a tremble in his voice. You don't remember this place? He asked quietly. I laughed, just a little. I mean, I've only been here a few times with my daughter. We moved nearby last year. He shook his head, like I'd given the wrong answer, like I was lying and didn't know it. Then he said the words that pulled the ground out from under me. You disappeared here, 10 years ago. They never found your body. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The air around me changed. I heard my daughter's laugh shift into silence. My heart started pounding hard, not like fear exactly, but like confusion pressing in from all sides. A zoo, a man I didn't know, and a statement so terrifyingly specific it didn't feel like a mistake. I looked down at Maylee. She was staring at me, her little eyebrows furrowed. Mommy? She asked. Why are your hands shaking? I hadn't noticed, but I was. My hands were trembling and my grip on hers was tightening. I forced a smile. It's nothing, sweetie, just surprised. I looked back at the man. He was still staring, still waiting for something. I think you have the wrong person, I said. I'm Calla Bren. I've never... He interrupted. That's not your name. And then he walked away just like that. No explanation, no apology, like he'd said what he came to say. I stood there in the middle of the zoo walkway, surrounded by parents and toddlers and popcorn carts, frozen in place while the world kept moving. Maylee tugged my hand and asked if we could go see the tigers next, like none of it had happened. I told her we would, but I wasn't really there anymore. Because in that one moment, something cracked. Something I didn't even know was fragile. And suddenly I had questions I wasn't ready to ask. Why did that man look at me like I was someone who vanished? Why did the name Lena suddenly echo in my head like it had always been there? And what was this place, this zoo, that suddenly felt more familiar than it should? I didn't know it then, but that day wasn't just a fun trip with my daughter. It was the beginning of the end of the life I thought was mine, and the start of remembering everything I was never supposed to remember. It was one of those perfect summer Saturdays, the kind that makes you feel like life is simple and good. The sun was high but not oppressive, and a soft breeze moved through the trees lining the zoo entrance. Parents pushed strollers, kids ran in every direction, and the air smelled like sunscreen and kettle corn. Maylee and I had made this our tradition over the past year, zoo mornings, just the two of us. She'd earned it after a full week of keeping her room clean and finishing her summer reading. I kept my promises. She knew that. Okay, Miss Animal Whisperer, I said, holding her hand as we walked past the sea lion exhibit. What's first today, the otters or the tigers? She didn't even hesitate. Tigers, the baby ones. Remember the one with the white paw? I nodded. How could I forget? You roared at it and made it cry. Her mouth dropped open in dramatic offense. Mom, that was one time, and I was 3. I laughed and ruffled her dark curls. Her hair was thick like mine, always a little wild, but she wore it with pride. She was 7 going on 17, bursting with curiosity, always asking questions I wasn't prepared for. I loved that about her. Heck, we'd been through a lot together, even if she didn't know it. It had always been just the two of us. I gave birth to her when I was 25, and I raised her on my own from day one. She never asked about her father, and I never brought him up. He wasn't part of the picture, and we were better off without him. I had built a quiet, steady life. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Redfield, a town that felt like it had been plucked out of a postcard. Safe, quiet, just removed enough from the chaos of the city, I worked in human resources at a logistics company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept us afloat. We didn't have much family. My grandmother passed when I was 26, just a year after Maylee was born. She had raised me after my parents died in a car crash when I was little. I barely remembered them. After Grandma passed, my uncle Aaron did his best to stay in touch. He was more like a distant mentor than a family fixture. But he was kind, and he always answered when I called. I had no siblings, no cousins I kept up with, and no real roots outside of Maylee. But that was enough for me. She was everything. Smart, funny, brave. She grounded me in a way nothing else ever had. Still, I'd had trouble sleeping for months. Strange dreams. Not violent, just confusing. Places I didn't recognize. Faces I couldn't place. Sounds that didn't belong in my life. I dismissed them as stress, blamed work deadlines or the occasional missed meal. I didn't want to overthink it. Overthinking was dangerous. It opened doors you couldn't always close. We sat near the flamingo pond that morning, sharing a cup of strawberry Dippin' Dots. Maylee was talking about how she wanted to be a zookeeper when she grew up, or maybe an astronaut, depending on whether flamingos could survive in space. I listened, smiling, resting my chin in my hand, and just watching her talk. She had this energy, this spark. Sometimes I wondered where it came from. "Can we get a stuffed red panda before we go home?" she asked, licking melted pink ice cream off her fingers. "We'll see. What happened to the last one?" She grinned. "He's in my backpack, but he needs a brother." She had an answer for everything. As we stood to move toward the tiger exhibit, I looked around the zoo. I liked this place. It was small enough to feel cozy, but big enough to explore. We'd been coming here almost every month since we moved. Still, there was something odd about today. Something I couldn't name, like the air felt thicker, or the colors looked brighter. I tried to shake it off. "Race you to the tiger den," Maylee said, already darting off ahead of me. "Walk, don't run," I called, jogging after her, laughing. That's when we passed the giraffe mural near the reptile house, and that's when I saw him, the zoo staffer, Clark. He looked at me like I had just walked out of a nightmare he thought was over. I didn't know him. I was sure of that. But something in the way he looked at me, recognition, fear, disbelief, froze me mid-step. Maylee came running back, tugging my arm. "Mom? What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just thought I saw someone I knew." That wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. I didn't know it then, but that was the last moment of the life I understood. That was the final breath before everything I believed about myself unraveled. We kept walking toward the tigers, but a part of me had already stopped. I tried to forget the man's words. I really did. After we got home from the zoo, I gave Maylee a bath, made her dinner, and tucked her into bed with a new story about moon bears and talking trees. She fell asleep with her hand curled around mine, like she used to do when she was a toddler. I stayed there long after she drifted off, staring at her ceiling, watching the plastic glow-in-the-dark stars we'd stuck up together last winter. The man's voice echoed through my head like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. "You disappeared here 10 years ago. They never found your body." It didn't make any sense. I was here, alive. I had a job, a daughter, a normal life. I had memories. Didn't I? I got up and went to my closet. There was a wooden box I kept on the top shelf, filled with old papers, half-used journals, letters I never sent. I pulled it down and sat on my bedroom floor. I flipped through notebook after notebook, pages full of lists, goals, to-dos. I was always trying to stay organized, but something started to bother me. Nothing in this box, nothing I owned, dated back more than 9 years. My earliest journal entry was from when I was 25. It started like this. "First night in the new apartment. Feels like a fresh start." No mention of where I came from. No real sense of what came before that day. Just pages filled with daily checklists and mundane notes about groceries and budgeting and baby names. I didn't even question it before. I'd always believed I was the type of person who didn't dwell on the past. I told myself I didn't remember my childhood clearly because it was traumatic. I told myself I didn't keep old photos because I preferred to live in the now. But sitting there with that box, I realized I couldn't tell you a single thing I did at 24. Not one. Not a face. Not a location, not even a moment. I picked up my phone and called the only person I trusted enough to ask, my uncle, Aaron. He answered on the third ring. Calla, everything okay? I paused. My mouth was dry. Do you remember when I first came to Redfield? There was a long silence on the other end. Why are you asking? I went to the zoo with Maylee today, and a man thought he recognized me. He said something strange, that I disappeared from there 10 years ago. Aaron let out a slow breath. It's probably a mistake. People see what they want to see. That's what I thought. But then I started looking through my old journals, and I don't have anything from before 25. Not one photo, not a memory. I don't even remember where I lived before Redfield. Calla. His tone shifted, calm but firm, like someone trying to hold the door shut on something trying to get in. There was a rough time back then. You were struggling, emotionally. It was better to move forward. We all agreed that starting fresh was healthier for you. We all agreed, I repeated. You and me, your therapist, the people who helped you. It wasn't easy. You don't remember everything because that was part of the process. What happened to me, Aaron? He didn't answer. Please, I said, I need to know. His voice softened, but there was fear in it now. I don't know everything. I wasn't there. I only found you after. You were confused, alone. You didn't even know your name. The silence between us deepened. I didn't know what to say. I felt like a crack had opened in my chest and I was staring into it, realizing there was no bottom. Do you remember the name Lena? I asked him. He went quiet again, and then he said, You shouldn't chase that name. Let it go. But I couldn't. I hung up and sat there on my floor, shaking. The next day, I arranged for Maylee to stay with a friend from school. I told her I had a work meeting. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet, maybe not ever. I drove back to the zoo. This time, I walked in with one goal: find the man who spoke to me. It didn't take long. He was standing near the same giraffe mural talking to another employee. When he saw me, he looked like he'd seen a ghost again. But he didn't look scared. He looked relieved. You came back, he said. Tell me what you think you know, I said, standing in front of him, staring him down. He looked around to make sure no one was listening, then motioned for me to follow him toward a side path, away from the crowds. You used to come here all the time, he said. Back then, your name was Lena Corinne. You were here the day you went missing. You walked into the reptile house and never came out. We searched the entire zoo, police, dogs, helicopters, but you were gone. My throat tightened. You must be confusing me with someone else. No, he said. I never forget a face. And you used to wear a necklace, a little stone bird carved from obsidian. I froze. My hand moved to the necklace I wore every day, a black bird, cold and heavy. I'd always thought it was just something I found in a thrift store. I couldn't remember buying it. He looked at me. You were her. You are her. And you don't remember any of it, do you? I couldn't speak, because he was right. Something was waking up inside me, and it didn't feel like a dream. I went home and took the necklace off for the first time in years. It sat heavy in my palm, colder than it should have been. I studied the shape more closely, an obsidian bird, wings folded, the details finely carved. It didn't look like costume jewelry. It looked like it had a story. But I didn't know what it was. I opened my laptop and typed the name into the missing persons database, Lena Corinne. My hands trembled as I hit enter. There she was. My heart stalled when the photo loaded. The image was grainy, low resolution, clearly scanned from an older document. The woman looked directly at the camera. Her eyes were soft but distant, hair dark, pulled back loosely. There was something about her posture that screamed exhaustion. She looked familiar, too familiar. The photo looked exactly like me. According to the file, she vanished on July 14, 2015, 24 years old, last seen entering the Redfield Zoo at approximately 10:42 a.m. Surveillance showed her walking in but never coming out. A 2-week search followed. Dive teams searched the ponds. Dogs combed the wooded areas behind the exhibits. Local volunteers spent nights canvassing the grounds. Nothing. Case status, presumed deceased, no body recovered. The details didn't make sense. If that woman was me, how could I just appear a year later under a new name with no legal trail, no investigation follow-up, no national coverage? I needed answers. I called Aaron again, not bothering to mask the anger in my voice. Why didn't you tell me? He didn't pretend not to know what I meant, because you asked me not to, over and over again. When? After I found you. You were terrified of being sent away. You didn't know who you were. You were broken. You said you didn't want your past. You begged me not to involve the police. I thought maybe the safest thing I could do was give you what you wanted. You helped me create a new identity, I said flatly. I helped you start over. The right people looked the other way. I didn't do it alone. Do you know who I was running from? Number I've wondered every day. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, he said. I don't regret saving you, but maybe I regret helping you forget. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together fragments that didn't want to fit. I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like my body was remembering what my mind refused to. I called in sick the next morning, dropped Maylee off at school, and drove straight to the Redfield Public Records Office. I requested archived news articles from July 2015. There were several. Young woman disappears from Redfield Zoo. Family pleads for information. Search for Lena Corin. Enters day 9. Community joins effort. No leads in zoo disappearance. Police scale back investigation. One article had a quote from the zoo staff. She came here all the time. She was quiet, kept to herself, always carried a notebook. That morning, she looked nervous, kept glancing over her shoulder. Then she walked into the reptile house and vanished. Another quote chilled me to the bone. She told me once she felt like someone was following her, that she had secrets she wasn't allowed to tell. Clark Reeves, senior caretaker, Redfield Zoo. I sat in the records room for almost an hour, staring at that quote. Clark had known who I was, not just recognized my face. He remembered my fear. Why was I afraid back then? What had I gotten involved in? Later that day, I returned to the zoo a third time, this time with purpose. Clark was in the staff area feeding a group of tortoises. I asked him to speak with me. He nodded and led me to a small wooden bench near the back of the primate enclosure, away from the guests. I've been looking into it, I told him, and I think you're right. I think I was her. His face was unreadable. I found a photo, a file, articles, but none of them explain why I disappeared. Do you know what happened to me? I have theories, he said slowly, but no proof. Tell me anyway. You came here a lot. You always seemed on edge, like someone was watching you. One morning you asked me if the zoo had security footage. I told you we did. You said someone might try to hurt you. I thought you were being paranoid. I leaned in. What happened the day I disappeared? He shook his head. All I know is this. I saw you enter the reptile house. Cameras caught that, but you never left. We thought maybe someone working here had access to tunnels, maintenance spaces. A staff member was fired the week before. Odd guy. Lived in the caretaker's cabin for years. I mentioned that to police. They searched, but didn't find anything. Who was he? Name was Nathan Marrow, maintenance technician. Records show he moved out right before you vanished, but some of us thought he never left. I felt a chill race down my arms. Where's the cabin? I asked. He looked at me carefully. You sure you want to remember that? Yes. He nodded. It's still there. No one uses it now. Locked up. Hidden behind the east gate near the old fence line. Something inside me snapped into focus. I needed to go there. Not later. Not with help. I needed to do it now. Because the only way forward was through whatever I had forgotten. I parked behind a line of employee trucks near the east fence, just outside the visitor paths. The zoo was still open, but this far back, it was silent. No kids, no chatter, just the low hum of cicadas and the occasional rustle of leaves. Clark had given me the code to the utility gate with a quiet warning. Don't go alone. That place has a weight to it. I didn't listen. The caretaker's cabin sat at the edge of a dense patch of trees. It was smaller than I expected, Maybe 20 feet across, weathered boards graying with time, windows clouded by years of dust and rot. The door was chained shut, but the lock was old. One hard tug with a rusted crowbar I found nearby, and it snapped. The smell hit me first. Mold, decayed fabric, something chemical. I stepped inside and let my eyes adjust. There was no light. I used the flashlight on my phone, sweeping it across the room. The place was packed wall to wall with stacked boxes, piles of blankets, empty cans, broken furniture. And then I saw it. A metal chair bolted to the floor with worn leather straps dangling from its arms. A small cot pushed against the wall. A stack of notebooks with torn pages. I froze. My chest tightened. I walked to the notebooks. The top one had my handwriting. I knew it instinctively. That looping way I wrote lowercase y's. The way I crossed my t's. The first page read, "If you're reading this, that means I didn't make it out. My name is Lena Corin." My legs gave out, and I sat hard on the floor. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. He says he's protecting me, but I know that's a lie. Every time I try to scream, he plays the recording, the one where I said I was fine. He makes me wear the necklace, says it keeps me safe. I think it's how he tracks me. I don't know how many days it's been. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I kept reading. There's a door in the floor. He keeps something down there. I heard scratching last night. I think it was an animal or a person. I scanned the floor, moved the cot aside. There it was, a trapdoor. I opened it. There were steps leading down to a concrete cellar. Cold air rushed up, dense and heavy. I descended slowly, gripping my phone like a weapon. The cellar was small, maybe the size of a walk-in closet. The walls were covered in photos. Dozens of them. All of me. Some were old. I was smiling, unaware. In some, I looked confused. In one, I was sleeping. My breath caught in my throat. These weren't just taken while I was here. Some were taken long before. He had been watching me. There were voice recordings too, labeled tapes. Some marked June 5th, compliance, July 8th, episode, and one labeled final. I didn't play them. I couldn't. Instead, I turned to the back wall where something strange caught my eye. Carved into the concrete were words, uneven and etched deep. It read, "I don't want to be forgotten, even if I forget myself." I stayed there in the dark for several minutes, surrounded by evidence of a life I had never remembered living, of pain I had survived without knowing how. But it was real, all of it. I climbed back up, left the cabin, and locked the gate behind me. When I got home, I didn't tell Maylee everything. Not yet, but I held her closer than I ever had. I brushed her hair away from her face and studied her like I might forget something important again. Later that night, I sat with Aaron in his kitchen and showed him the notebook. He didn't speak for a long time. "I should have done more," he said quietly. "No," I said. "You did what you could. You gave me a life again." He nodded, but I could see how deeply it hurt him. I filed a report the next day, turned over the notebook, the photos, and the tapes. Clark helped corroborate what he knew. The case was reopened, and the zoo began an internal investigation into how a man like Nathan Marrow could live beneath their grounds unnoticed. They never found him. No current address, no relatives, nothing. But I wasn't waiting for them to give me closure. I had already found what I needed. I remembered who I was. I wasn't just Calla Bren, single mom and HR assistant. I was also Lena Corin, the woman who had disappeared and refused to stay gone. The woman who had been silenced but found her voice again. The woman who had survived. And I was going to decide what came next. Some people survive by forgetting. I survived by unknowingly starting over. In the days that followed, the investigation into my past life deepened. Authorities reclassified my disappearance as a long-term abduction. The news picked up the story. My photo, both of them, started circulating again. The woman who vanished and the woman who came back. It felt strange, seeing myself through the eyes of strangers. Some called it a miracle, others called it suspicious. But I wasn't interested in public attention. I only cared about the truth. I started trauma therapy through a local clinic. The sessions were exhausting. Each one peeled back another layer I had spent a decade unknowingly hiding. I began to piece together fragments from those lost months, images, smells, moments, a red blanket, the sound of metal scraping, the taste of fear. Most of it came in waves, never all at once. I learned that was common. The brain protects what the soul cannot bear. But I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt awake. I also changed my name legally. I kept Calibren, not because I wanted to forget who I was before, but because that name was the one I gave myself. It was the name I built a life with, the name my daughter first spoke, the one that carried me out of the dark. Lena Corinne may have been the beginning, but Calibren was the fighter who made it to the other side. One quiet Saturday morning, I took Maylee back to the zoo. She was nervous at first. She remembered the strange man and the moment I froze by the giraffe mural. I promised her everything was okay now. I had explained just enough. That a long time ago, before she was born, something very bad happened to me, and I had only just remembered it. I told her she helped me find my way back. She held my hand the entire time. Her grip was stronger than usual. We stopped near the same giraffe enclosure. The mural had been repainted, brighter now, more colorful. I stood in front of it, tracing the outline of a tree I had once seen in a dream, and now knew was real. "Is this where the man saw you?" Maylee asked. I nodded. "Yes." She looked up at me. "You're not going to disappear again, right?" "No," I said. "Never again." She smiled and leaned into my side. Later, we found Clark near the flamingo pond. He waved us over, offered Maylee a souvenir token from the gift shop. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. We shared a quiet understanding. He had opened a door I didn't know existed, and through it I had found my history. For that, I would always be grateful. Before we left, I took one more walk by myself. I made my way to the path near the old caretaker's cabin. It was fenced off now, posted with security signs and slated for demolition. I stood just outside the gate and listened. Nothing stirred. No wind, no voices, just stillness. I pulled the bird necklace from my pocket and held it tight for a moment. Then I let it drop into the brush beyond the gate. That part of my life was finished. I walked away without looking back. In the weeks that followed, I started writing. Not just journaling, but full, painful, honest writing. I wrote every memory I could gather, every feeling, every question. It became a story I never thought I would share, but one I knew someone out there might need. I submitted it anonymously to a survivor's support site. A week later, I received a message from another woman who said my words helped her recognize her own buried memories. She didn't know what had happened to her, but she knew something had. She'd always blamed herself for the gaps in her life. Now she didn't feel alone. That was when I realized what survival really meant. It wasn't just making it through the dark. It was finding your voice and using it, even when it shakes. It was telling the truth, not just for yourself, but for the people still trapped inside their silence. I still have hard days. The past doesn't stay buried just because you uncover it. But I face it now, fully, open-eyed, steady. I'm raising a daughter who knows strength isn't the absence of fear, but the courage to ask questions and keep going. I used to believe that forgetting saved me. Now I know the truth. What saved me was coming back to myself and remembering that I was never gone. If this story moved you, if it made you think about memory, identity, or survival in a new way, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more real, powerful stories like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt like there was a part of your past you couldn't explain? Have you ever questioned the story you were told about yourself? Your voice matters here. This community is about truth, resilience, and reclaiming the pieces we thought were lost. Thank you for listening, for believing, and for remembering with me. We're just getting started.